Welcome everyone to this morning's Author Spotlight. I'm joined here by Marie-ann Quin. She's the author of Emerald to Pounamu, A Midwife's Odyssey. Thank you so much for being here today, Marie-ann.
That's fine. Thank you for inviting me.
Cool. So I just wanted to know a little bit about the inspiration behind this story. What told you that there was a story that needed to be written?
In about 2004, the midwives had a 100-year celebration for the time we had been registered, and I did a ballad of midwifery for that. And I did a bit of research. I asked the local newspaper. I knew there'd been some birthing centres in Te Awamutu, and I interviewed some midwives and some nurses who had worked later in that decade, really, or in that century, but quite early on as well. And I just got really keen on history, of which I hadn't been interested in before. And the more I delved into it, the more interesting it became. So I wrote the Ballad of Midwifery after quite a bit of research, and I just decided, well, gee, there's so much information here. It just has to be a story more than just a little ballad. And so then I began my quest in earnest, and I did some creative writing courses, of which I'd already done, in fact, and but did some research down in Alexander Turnbull Library about history of midwifery, the settlers coming to New Zealand, people coming in on boats, and they had all of the births, deaths, and marriages all documented on logs. So, as I say, the more I delved into it, the more interested I became in it, and the few interviews I did with the midwives were just amazing. They really got me my energy up to do more. I took courses in interviewing, and it just became an inevitable that I would write the book. It was a win, not an if.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think that you can tell you were really excited about the research of it as well, because the facts are so detailed. It's like you were there, reciting it. So I think that's a really cool thing to be a witness to. Research can sometimes be a little bit dull, but it shows that you were really interested in the subject. So I really love that. And you went to the Alexander Turnbull Library. Did you, and you interviewed midwives, did you have anyone that helped you curate those facts for you, or did you just kind of go in and just figure it out yourself?
Mostly figure it out myself. With the interview course, the people who did the course were older people from Radio New Zealand, and they were very, very helpful. But mostly a bit of reading, a bit of research and how to do it, and just lots of fact taking and writing it down. And I just had, a big box of interesting data, really. Found the Petone Museum, which has all the logs of the ships, and just looked into my own family history too, which came out really, really well. Finding how they came to New Zealand and sort of marrying and that with the book. Excuse me.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Your family, they came here from Ireland, and I think that your title, Emerald to Pounamu, it's really interesting. Is that sort of the idea behind it? Was there anything else that it meant apart from the migration here?
I started off because quite a few of my Irish ancestors came in on the boats, but also a German contingency came in from northern Germany, and they were my ancestors as well, and they came from very poor areas of the north of Germany, and the same as the Irish settlers. There was nothing for them in their home country, and there was a lot of offers of land and improvement in their lifestyle, and their ability to own land increased if they came to New Zealand, or so they were promised. And so that sort of came in along the way after I'd started writing the book, really, the use of the German factor. And we had a reunion of 175 years of the ship of my ancestors from Germany coming, and all of a sudden these absolute perler of stories came out of that, and I got permission from some of the settlers that came on the same ship as my ancestors to use some of their stories as well. And so where I was going to come into Gisborne, which is where I grew up, actually changed to Nelson because the German settlers came into Nelson, and it just had to be that way. It was, the story just diverted to Nelson, and I had these lovely, lovely stories that I could use in fiction, but based on fact.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I always find it really interesting how these stories come to be, especially from people who maybe weren't authors previously. So I would like to know, how did you find the writing process? Did it flow freely for you, or did you have moments of that dreaded writer's block?
It was really funny because I didn't realise that I knew I'd done a correspondence course in creative writing somewhere back there when I used to work at 80-hour weeks as a midwife and not a lot of spare time, but I must have had a little bit of a twinkling of an interest in it at some stage. And when I was going through some of my things, looking for some data, I found a diploma of creative writing that I'd achieved in 2002, which really surprised me. And so I'd already had that little flame, ignited. And as I started writing the book, my daughter, who has got a doctorate in German and English literature, she came across a course through America online that was the Right Practice course, and she said, "Mum, there's this 100-day book challenge. I'm writing this book. How about we do it?" And so the actual course was being held at the same time as you got in your manuscript, and you had a challenge to get in, say, 7 pages, or every 3 days. And so the challenge was on, and you get your course fee back, or $100 of your course fee back if you completed it in 100 days. And so we both did. And the learning in that was fantastic.
I bet. Yeah, that's really
so that
cool.
drove me on a bit.
Yeah. And then at that point, like when you hit a wall with that writer's block, you know how to push through a little bit easier, which is sometimes really hard to come back from. So that's really cool. What an amazing thing to do. I would also like to know, just in general, what was it that made you decide that you wanted to be a midwife?
So ever since I was a little toddler, apparently my mum said my first word was baby. And and if I ever went missing, we lived on a cul-de-sac, so I was quite safe, but Mum would always find me in the house of a baby. And that's all I ever wanted to do, was to work with mothers and babies right from the get-go. And so when I went to look into my career, I found I had to do my nursing training first at that stage. And so I did that, and then I got married, and had children and was never in the right place to do my midwifery, but I did work in the maternity area, and I worked as a plunket nurse. So I just always focused on mothers and babies. And finally, in 1990, I did my midwifery, and it was the right time, and we could become autonomous and work as self-employed midwives, either by ourselves or with a doctor.
Yeah, wow. It seems like you chose the right time for sure to do that. And I will say, like, with so many years of experience in this field, you must have encountered some pretty interesting situations. Can you tell us briefly maybe a unique story that springs to mind?
Yes, I think probably what really stirred me on also to really realise the difficulties that people had in the days of the 1900s, or the 1800s, should I say, especially on a ship and that kind of thing, was the fact that I'm a rural midwife, and sometimes a remote rural midwife. And you come across a lot of challenges, and you haven't got a bell to push. You're not in a hospital setting. You can't call for help, quickly. And I've had situations where I've, delivered breech babies, and I did have a twin birth where, it's pretty tricky, really, especially with the second twin. And really, I was it with very little help, and I had to do it. There was no choice, and you had to just pull up all your instincts, um, and we had a good outcome. But it could have been either way, because that's the nature of life and death, really. And also, really brought home to me that giving birth and being born are two of the most dangerous things we can do in life, and that's been lost on technology and intervention, and the fact that we have got so much more knowledge and help. So, as working as a remote rural midwife, I had some amazing challenges, and probably that twin birth was one of the most amazing, and got two live babies out of it, 34 weeks, and they're doing very well.
Oh,
Um, mm.
yeah. I feel like you have to have nerves of steel to be a midwife, because you're right. There is no two ways about it. You have to do it. So people are relying on you. And yeah, you really, really need to have that calm, steady demeanor and just get on with it. That's really, really amazing. Thank you for sharing that with me. And I think, lastly, I just want to ask you, do you have any more plans to write novels like this of a similar ilk, or maybe of a different subject matter?
Well, this one, the Pounamu, the Emerald to Pounamu, really, it was going to be one book from the time the settlers came to New Zealand to modern day, because I have probably lived through or worked through three major changes in midwifery, and so that was going to be one book. But all of a sudden, when I got well and truly through the first book, it was one book, the settler stage. There was just too much information, and so it's really morphed into three books probably. And I'm just in the throes of writing the second book, which is the transition from lay midwives to registered midwives who had real strict guidelines about how they trained, and who was there at births and what happened.
Mhm.
And so I'm writing that transitional stage in the early 1900s. I'm writing that, and it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I probably that was my only block, really, because just getting motivated started after the hype of the launch and the authors' talks that I've had, and that that kind of put me on a little bit of a backward I don't know whether I could be bothered or whatever. And
feel like
and I
it's
just
hard and you can just relax, but yeah, you've got things that you need to do now.
yeah, and now I've started it. I've got the excitement back again, and really, as far as I'm concerned, I don't write the book. The book writes itself, and the characters come out themselves, and they surprise me all the time. I don't know what's going to happen next,
Wow.
and this major character does things that wow, where did that come from? And so when my daughter and I were doing the competition for the 100-day book challenge, she said to me, "Mum, I'm a plotter and you're a pantser." And she said, "You just write by the seat of your pants." And I do. I just get the idea and I just spill it out onto the page,
Yeah.
and she plots and fiddles around with it and everything like that. And who knows which one works best, but that's how it works for me.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm always fascinated by how authors go about writing their stories because to me it seems like such a huge process. So it's really interesting to hear that you experienced one form of writing and your daughter experienced a completely different one. And yeah, it's obvious that you can do it both ways. Obviously, your one has worked out very well for you. So just continue to do what you're doing. Okay, so that was a fantastic talk, and I just wanted to thank you again for coming to join me and talk to me about this book. And I'm really excited to hear that you are writing a sequel and also a third by the sounds of it. So, yeah, would like to have you back again for sure when that comes out. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me today.
Look forward to it. Okay, bye.